Welcome everyone to the NFL Week 18 prop show here on RJ Bell's Dream Preview. I'm your host, Munaf Manji, here to get you guys ready for the final week of the NFL regular season before we do get into NFL playoffs. Got the entire crew here to wrap up the NFL season. First, we missed him for the past couple of weeks, but we've been doing our best to hold it down. It's Steve Reider. Steve, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Nothing. It felt like dead weight there for a little bit, you guys. You guys have been hitting your stride in my absence. So certainly miss talking the player props on a weekly basis. Glad we're back for rounding out the Week 18 slate here and before we get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. A lot to get into here for the episode. And also joining us, of course, the hardest working man over at pregame.com, SleepyJ. Sleepy, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Recuperating after New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I took a lot of naps, ate a lot of raviolis. Me and my girlfriend there made a lot of raviolis the other day, so we had a recipe from her grandparents, and I think we knocked out about 250 raviolis from scratch, and we
Wow.
just been giving them away, eating. So yeah, it's I'm gonna have to do some walking or something.
Munaf, did you get your raviolis that Sleepy sent you?
I did not get them.
Me,
Did you
me
get
either.
them? Oh, yeah.
No,
All
no. It
right.
was, how many raviolis and not one went to us? That's interesting.
Yeah, interesting
I'll
there for
I'll
sure.
keep you guys in mind after for the off season.
um, yeah, I just want to take a second to wish a happy new year to all of the listeners here, of course. It's been a lot of fun this season, but still a ways to go here. What we'll do on this episode, of course, when we talk about the end of the regular season, a lot of players still vying for some player incentive, uh, I guess, bonuses in their contracts. We'll touch on the top ones that we're looking at, and I'll get thoughts from both Sleepy and Steve if there's other ones that we are looking at and that we will be betting for the final week of the regular season here. Of course, we'll give you 4 player props each for the NFL Week 18 games. Since, of course, there's no Monday Night Football game, we'll preview what's probably the game of the year between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. A lot at stake there. We'll get into that. And, of course, we'll wrap it up with our player prop best bet coming off of another winner for that. We are 12-6 on the year with our player prop best bet. So hopefully we can close out the regular season with a winner. But, gentlemen, let's get into it here. Mention the player prop incentives, and I'll get into the top 4, or not top 4, but the ones I think I am looking at that I think these players can definitely achieve. I know there's a very, very long list here, but we'll start here with the one that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks here, and that's Mike Evans. He did get his touchdown contract bonus incentive deal with the touchdowns. He had 2 last week in that game against the Panthers. He still needs 5 receptions and 85 receiving yards to uncover a bonus of 1 million each for those. Of course, we know that Mike Evans is trying to keep this career long streak alive of at least 1,000 receiving yards in his career. Has a pretty good matchup this week against the New Orleans Saints. I think we'll go step by step here, give our thoughts, and then we can work our way there from there. Steve, I'll start with you on Mike Evans. We gave out the player prop best bet a few weeks ago against Dallas. Unfortunately, I did not get there, but I went right back to him last week. Had a monster game against the Carolina Panthers. But when your quarterback in Baker Mayfield says that he's thinking more about the 1,000-yard streak for Mike Evans and Mike is himself, I think that's definitely something that's going to be on the short list and be on a bettable action for me this week. But what are your thoughts on Mike Evans?
Yeah, I think when you talk about these things, we kind of have to put things in perspective, right? A couple years ago, this was a moneymaker. We made a ton of money betting these kind of things because the market didn't know about it, the public didn't know a ton about it. And since then, there's been certain Twitter heads that I won't mention their names to give them publicity that kind of put it out just so they can get acclaim and followers. And they give it out early, right at the
Yeah.
end of the games last week. It comes up. There's no even lines to bet on. And this guy is suggesting that we bet these plays. And what it ends up doing is it gives all the information. It makes it very easy for these bookmakers to set the lines accordingly, knowing that there's going to be some public action on it. So when we talk about a play like Mike Evans, where he needs 85 yards and 5 catches, it seems attainable for him. But his number right now is set at 98, and it's juiced to the over at
Yeah.
Caesars. And when I'm looking at his pass receiving yards props, just from the season long, it was 51, 58, 66, 73, 70, 83, 85. and now we're talking 98. So there is a huge tax that's put onto this. Do I think that the Buccaneers will try to get him this contract thing? Of course, I think they would love to give him, but I don't know. Asking for 98 yards in a meaningless game for the Bucs in some respects. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it as a 2-touchdown favorite against a team that has been packed up for the last couple of weeks. It just, there's a tax on all of these plays that we're going to be talking about today. And if anything, I want to let the public bet it and maybe look to the other side. I think most of the time now, with the way that the market is, I'd almost look to fade some of these plays as we continue talking about these incentives.
I'll mention one more that you mentioned that there's a tax on that's on the list here for me. J.K. Dobbins needing 58 rushing yards to reach 900 for the season to unlock a $150,000 contract bonus. I saw that number anywhere. I think currently sitting at around 71.5, 72.5. So again, there's like you mentioned, that tax right there is also there for J.K. Dobbins here. Sleepy, let me shift this to you. Mike Evans needs 5 for 85, and then J.K. Dobbins 58. And you have any thoughts on those two guys?
I think Mike Evans can get there. I think Dobbins can get there. When those guys are going for big money, obviously the team and the quarterback and the coaches are going to try to get them guys involved as much as possible. But Steve will probably tell you the same thing that I'm going to tell you. It seems as if right now that this is like, it's the flavor of the week when you go into week 18
Yeah.
to bet the incentives. You really should probably be trying to bet them in week 16 and week 17
Yep.
because the information's already out there. So go ahead and try to find out, well, who's on the list now to go ahead and get their incentive early before this whole, everybody jumps into this big party of incentives in week 18. We should be betting this stuff earlier because that's what the wise guys are doing. So that's kind of what I'll just throw out there, and I'll just leave it at that.
Two more I'll mention here before we do get into player props. Corlin Sutton needs 82 receiving yards against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 18 for 500,000. His number is actually set at around 64.5, 65.5. I think that's definitely attainable for Corlin Sutton. And the last one is Geno Smith needs 185 passing yards and a Seattle Seahawks win to unlock $2 million each. So Geno Smith may be a little one that if you're like a same game parlay player, if you want to do like 200, passing yards, and then the Seattle Seahawks money line, I'm sure that one will be juicy there as well. But again, we're talking about a significant amount of money there for Geno Smith. I'm sure we'll talk about more as we progress through the episode here of our player props here. But I think those were the top 4 ones that I mentioned. But again, there's like Steve mentioned, there's the information's all out there as far as, players vying for those contract bonuses and their, player performance based deals. Before we get into the props here, Steve, anything else you want to add to that conversation?
I was just looking at your Cortland Sutton play. His closing numbers are all kind of in line where he is right now. So I don't see as big of a tax on someone like that. So if you're asking me Mike Evans or Cortland Sutton, I would be more interested in Cortland Sutton's over more so than Mike Evans at the price.
Yeah. Sleepy, anything else?
No, I'm good on the incentives.
All right, let's get into our player props here for week 18. We'll start off with a quarterback prop here. Sleepy, I'll let you lead off, man. Where are you taking us for your quarterback prop?
I'm going to go to Cortland Sutton, quarterback, Bo Nix. I'm going to play him over his longest completion of 35.5 yards. He's gone over this number in 5 of his last 6 games. And like we just talked about with Sutton going for incentives, we know that that's Bo Nix' deep threat. Well, why not go ahead and try to get Sutton the ball, deep in this one? And you have to ask yourself, what are the Chiefs actually playing for in this game? Well, I mean, you got backup guys that are probably going to end up in here on the field because Kansas City's locked up the first round bye. So when you get influx of just second, third string type of guys against the first string offense, it just tells me that there's going to be some type of a breakdown defensively. And when that happens, you end up with big plays. And no better person here than Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton to expose that. So I think that Bo Nix is going to he's going to get Sutton close to this incentive that he needs in maybe 1 or 2 passes. And one of them's going to go pretty deep here. So Bo Nix, longest completion over 35.5 yards.
Steve, any thoughts on Bo Nix?
Kind of what you guys are saying right there. I mean, there's not much to add to it. I think the Sutton prop is an interesting one. So that would make sense that I would look to the over there. KC, the defense has been interesting all year. I haven't been overly impressed with them. And, frankly, how many guys are actually going to play? Denver, 11-point favorite. You expect them to be able to move the ball on offense. So it kind of all checks out from that perspective.
All right, Steve, take us to your quarterback prop, man. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Michael Penix over 222 passing yards versus Carolina. And so much of this, with a new quarterback coming in, especially the first game or two, I tend to look to their over rushing. I feel like they look for the first read, the game speeds up a little bit, and they kind of bail early. And as time progresses, that kind of shifts where they get a little bit more comfortable. The offensive coordinator gets a little bit more comfortable. They can make multiple reads down the field. And some of the passes that we saw last week, it's a narrative right now that the Falcons kind of blew it. And, they lost last week in a game they should have won. They should be in the playoffs right now. And it looks like they could be on the outside looking in. But I don't know if that's necessarily Michael Penix's fault, especially there was a couple interceptions that were thrown last week that it looked like it might have been more of the receiver's problem than Michael Penix. He is somebody that does have a strong arm. The reason why he kind of dropped a little bit in the draft, or at least pre-draft, was because of his injuries. He's healthy right now. He can throw the ball. He has the receiving weapons. And frankly, Carolina is second worst in drop back EPA this year. So I think with the game script, with the fact that, this is kind of like a new toy, you want to see what he can do. I think he's going to have plenty of opportunities. And frankly, Carolina's defense is shot, and they have a ton of injuries themselves that I think Michael Penix will exploit and certainly hit at least 223 passing yards this weekend.
Yeah, I mean that Carolina defense, whether it's through the air or whether it's on the ground, it's just been atrocious all season. We saw it last week on full display against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think a good opportunity here for Michael Penix really to come out and utilize his arm against the Carolina Panthers. All right, I'll get over to my quarterback prop here. Talked about this gentleman earlier, Baker Mayfield, over on his passing yards, 250.5. And 8 games this season in Tampa at home. He's averaging 283 passing yards per game. You see what he's done over the last several games here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. He's had 288 or more passing yards in 4 straight games. He's had 300 plus passing yards over the last 2 games as well. 303 against Dallas, 359 against the Carolina Panthers. And this is a meaningful game, right? For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where I believe if they do win this game, they win the NFC South division. So, we talked about Mike Evans. I think they'll come out early in this game and air it out. I do believe that if your book offers those props of first half passing yards, I think that's also a look here for Baker Mayfield, where if they do get out to a 2-3 touchdown lead against the Saints, like we've talked about, a team that's pretty much wrapped it up with all the injuries that they are dealing with. That they could, run the ball with Bucky Irving. And we saw last week that both Baker, Mike Evans, and Bucky Irving all had big weeks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So another player that's vying for some contract incentives. He's already there in those categories where he needs to cash 5, being in the top in completion percentage, touchdown passes, passing yards, yards per pass attempt as well. So I think, Baker, he's having a phenomenal season for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. I think that continues here in the final week here. So I like Baker this week over 250.5 passing yards in this game against the New Orleans Saints here, Sleepy.
Yeah, I don't mind this one. I think you have to kind of try to reward Baker Mayfield as much as possible for all the hard work that he's done for this Tampa Bay team. You just mentioned Bucky Irving. So I'm going to go right into my running back prop with this one there, Munaf. I'm going to play Bucky Irving over his rushing yards. Right now it's 84.5. He's taken over the Buccaneers backfield. Rashad White now has gone to, second, third string. I don't know why or how, but Bucky Irving's been that good, and he's gone over this number at 84.5 rush yards in 4 of his last 6 games. And you would expect in a game in which Tampa Bay's favored heavily that they're going to end up probably being able to run the clock out late. Now, does that mean Bucky Irving's going to get the ball? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, but there is a chance that, let's say they're up 2 scores or 17 points, that he's out there to go ahead and secure this victory for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Saints rush defense right now, it's 3rd worst in the league, and Irving has been known for breaking off big runs recently. He's had 4 35-yard or more rushing yards in 4 of his last 6 games. So dude's hitting the hitting the accelerator button there, and Tampa Bay realizes that, so they're giving him all the chances to go out there and be the number one back. So I think he'll break one or two big runs here. Saints rush defense is absolutely terrible, so I'm gonna play him over 84.5 rush yards.
No disrespect to Amir Abdullah, but career day for him last week against the Saints. 20 carries, 115 rushing yards on 5.75 yards per carry for Amir Abdullah. So, and like Sleepy mentioned, Bucky Irving has been phenomenal over the past several games for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. Honestly, I think we could see a repeat of what this offense did last week for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Mayfield, Evans, and again, Bucky Irving having another big weeks here as they win and they clinch the NFC South division.
Munaf, do you
Yeah.
remember last week who gave out Amir Abdullah?
Well, it wasn't me, and so that would leave you by default, my friend, Sleepy. So there you go. Just going right back to the well on what's been cashing over the past several weeks here. Steve, take us over to your running back prop, my man. What do you got?
Yeah, slim pickings right now. I guess we should talk about that real quick too. Is that because of everything that is going on, and we don't know who's going to be starting, who's what coach is taking it seriously, who's not. There's not a lot of options on this market at all right now. So when we go through these games, there's some plays that I like a lot, and there's some that I don't. The one I'm going to go over right now is not something I'm in love with. I actually like Sleepy's play better than this, but we're going to go Derrick Henry over 88.5 rushing yards versus Cleveland. Obviously he's shown a propensity to get to triple digits throughout the season. I guess the question right now is, how bad do the Ravens want to win this game? How long are they going to keep their starters in if the game is in doubt late? Right now they're 3-score favorites, so you anticipate them playing with a lead. I think they're going to try to be conservative, hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, and I'm hoping that he hits this number through 3 quarters because, frankly, I'm not sure if there's going to be reason for him to play in the fourth. I would imagine if they are up by 3 scores, they kind of shut things down early, try to get out of there with a win and move on. And from the other side of things, Cleveland's defense has been okay. Not the stout defense that we've kind of come to know from them this year. But you have to think that they're checked out. I mean, this is the last game. They were supposed to be good coming into the year. They obviously have not been. They're missing the playoffs. The quarterback situation's a hot mess. I think that team, that organization is ready for the offseason, from coaches to players. And I'm curious how much of an incentive do they have to go out there and stop a Derrick Henry. I mean, that guy is a bull in a china shop every time he steps onto the football field. And frankly, I'm not sure if Cleveland's up for that challenge on the defensive side of the ball. So I think he's going to have to do it probably in 3 quarters, but I think that certainly is attainable. Derrick Henry over 88 rushing yards.
Yeah, I think that this is a guy that we know can get it done within a half, just because of how great he's been behind this offensive line of the Baltimore Ravens. They did match up earlier this season, of course, being the same division. He averaged, I believe it was 6.6 4 yards per carry. Did Derrick Henry here. And I think he still needs one more touchdown to get another contract incentive bonus as well. He's already unlocked a couple more as well. So I think you're right, Steve. I think that if they're out to a 3 touchdown lead or they're up by 4 possessions at the end of the third quarter, you're not going to see Lamar and Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers out there for this team. So hopefully he does get this done in 3 quarters. What you mentioned there, Steve, give this one out, but not completely in love with it, but the numbers were just backing it up. Najee Harris over 44.5 rushing yards against the Cincinnati Bengals this week on Saturday. And, Najee's actually been really good in his career against the Cincinnati Bengals, especially over the last 4 games where he's had at least 70 rushing yards against this Cincinnati Bengals lack thereof rush defense. 2 of those 4 games, he had 90 plus rushing yards, 90, 99, 78, and 75 earlier this season against the Cincinnati Bengals rush defense. And, the slim chance that the Bengals do have of making the playoffs, obviously they need a lot of help to get there. But, running backs just continue to have success against this team. On the season, they're allowing 92 rushing yards per game. Teams are running at around 21 times per game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Last week, we saw Jalen McLaughlin of the Denver Broncos had 10 carries for 69 yards, 6.9 yards per carry against the Bengals. Jerome Ford had a big run in the first quarter against the Cincinnati Bengals 2 weeks ago and he finished the game with 92 rushing yards in that game. So I think there's an opportunity here for Najee Harris. I know Coach Tomlin loves Najee Harris. Also, Jalen Warren, I know he's taken over the most of the snaps there for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he is also dealing with a rib injury. Not sure how effective he is going to be in this game. Is Jalen Warren, but asking Najee to get me 45 rushing yards in this game, I don't seems like a doesn't seem like a tall order for me. So I'll give you that one. Najee Harris over 44 and a half rushing yards here against the Cincinnati Bengals on Saturday here, Sleepy.
Yeah, I don't have much of an opinion on this one. One thing that I've liked from Najee though this year is it seems like he's running angry. It looks like he's running for a purpose. There were a lot of times last year where I watched him play football and I was just like, he just looks like he's going through the motions. And it looks like it's, back to the original, Najee Harris that, made him a starting running back. So the yardage seems kind of low to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would be with you before I'd be against you, but I like the way that he's playing right now.
All right, let's get over to our wide receiver props here. Sleepy, lead us off.
All right, I'm going super square ball here with this one. I've been good on these square picks though this year. I'm going to play Jerry Jeudy over 49 and a half receiving yards. We don't know necessarily who's going to play quarterback this week for the Browns. I think we're pretty sure it's not going to be Jameis Winston. So it's either DTR or it's going to be Bailey Zappi. Well, let's go back 2 weeks ago. DTR, he ended up throwing the football to Jerry Jeudy just 3 times, 3 targets in that game. So I don't know if something was said or if DTR realized, like, hey, I might want to get it to my best player, if I want to remain a backup quarterback in this league. So he went out and he threw the ball 18 times to Jerry Jeudy last week. And right now, the Browns, their rushing attack's limited. Jerome Ford went down with an ankle injury. We know Nick Chubb's out with the broken foot. So you're now down to your third string, fourth string running backs. You would assume that if it's DTR and the limited playbook within the rushing attack, that it's probably going to be at least enough volume here for Jerry Jeudy. And if he sees 18 targets again in this game, there's no way that he's not going over 49 and a half yards. So I think we just play this one. I know it's super square. It feels square. I understand DTR and Bailey Zappi, not reputable quarterbacks, but I think we just play this one and hope for the best. It's probably not really better than a 50% type of prop, but if I get those crazy targets again, it's got to be 70 plus percent. So I'm going to go play that one. Jerry Jeudy over 49 and a half receiving yards.
Yeah, also looking at his game script wise, right? I mean, if they are going to be trailing in this game where we obviously do anticipate them to be based on the point spread, that they're going to have to come out and or continue to throw the football here. I think those targets definitely will continue to be there for a guy like Jerry Jeudy. Judy's had 13 or more targets in 3 of the last 5 games. And just last week, again, 12 receptions, 18 targets, 94 receiving yards against the Miami Dolphins. Steve, take us over to your wide receiver problem, man. What do you got?
Yeah, going Amon-Ra St. Brown over 75 receiving yards. And frankly, this is a little bit high. This is actually his highest number posted so far this season. And it's actually been bet up since it got posted, which it opened at 70. It's obviously up 5 yards now. So we're paying a little bit of a premium. But when we're looking at the total of the game, we're at 57 right now. And that's the highest total we've seen in all season, I believe. I don't think anything has even approached this number. So there's obviously a lot of anticipation of scoring, which means there's probably going to be a lot of offense that goes with it. Minnesota has had success getting after the quarterback with their blitz schemes, but that's not really something that Detroit shouldn't be able to counter. Obviously, they have a very strong run game. That play action pass coming off of it should work wonders against this Vikings team. They've run a lot of too high safety looks. That's kind of in Amon-Ra St. Brown's wheelhouse. And he's actually had over 100 receiving yards in his last 3 games against Minnesota, including one this year where he had 8 receptions. So I think it's going to be a lot of passing in the game to keep stride. I think they're going to be keeping pace with one another. And frankly, Amon-Ra St. Brown's the best one for the Lions. So I do anticipate his over hitting here at 75 and a half.
Yeah, you mentioned it, right? This is the highest total we've seen all season. As far as the total goes, I think they scored 60 combined in the matchup earlier this season. So anticipating seeing a lot of offense in this game. And when we talk about a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, targets machine, receptions machine, the yardage has been there for him as well. I do anticipate this being a big game for him. And obviously not having David Montgomery back there. I think it opens up opportunities as well in the passing game as well, because I talked a lot about David Montgomery receiving yards this season when it came to those running back props. But I think that in a game like this, I think Jared Goff is going to be looking for his number one guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right, for my wide receiver prop here, gentlemen, I am going to go with Corlin Sutton over 64 and a half receiving yards. And Denver, obviously, very much in control of making the playoffs here. All they have to do is win against the Chiefs here on week 18. Chiefs pretty much sitting all their key guys. We know Carson Wentz is going to be starting here at the quarterback position for the Chiefs. And hopefully, Sleepy, you mentioned you like Bo Nix longest completion to go over. Hopefully those passes do go to Corlin Sutton. We talked about the contract incentive bonus there as well for him. So I think we're getting, I don't want to say a discount here, but I think this is what we're typically seeing a Corlin Sutton receiving yard prop set at. So I do think there's to be an emphasis of finding Corlin Sutton in this game, a meaningful game for the Denver Broncos. I think that he can walk into 70 plus receiving yards. Hopefully they're able to get him up and over that number of 83, what he needs for that contract bonus as well. And they're walking their way into the playoffs here as well. So I know that Corlin Sutton gave him out, I think, a few weeks ago on Thursday Night Football where he just laid goose eggs. But since then, he had really responded here. But in a big game here, I do expect Corlin Sutton to have a big game. So I'll take him over 64 and a half receiving yards for this matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, let's get over to our fourth and final prop here for week 18. Sleepy, what do you got?
All right, I'm going with Baltimore Ravens tight end Mark Andrews over 36 and a half receiving yards. So I don't want to push back on Steve with this one because I don't want to fade Derrick Henry. But I really think that the tight ends are going to be targeted in this game. In particular, the Browns defense against the tight end is like fifth worst in the league. So I ask myself, all right, well, what did Andrews do against Cleveland when he played against them? Well, he got 5 targets, 5 catches, 35 yards. Well, go back to week 8 and look at the game and look at the other tight ends in there. Isaiah Likely had targets. Their third string tight end had targets. They had 11 targets to the tight end in that game. And I think that when you're the Ravens and you know you're going to be in the playoffs, that you may not want to use Zay Flowers. You may not want to use Derrick Henry because how much depth do you have there? Well, the tight end position is one that the Ravens, I think, can actually afford an injury. If Mark Andrews went down, they have Likely. If Likely goes down, they have Mark Andrews. So I feel that the Ravens are going to realize, hey, we went this route before against the Browns. Why not do it again? It's a weakness of theirs. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to play Mark Andrews over to 36 and a half receiving yards. He had limited work last week. I think he only got 2 catches, but he had like 68 yards. So, I mean, it was a good week for him, but limited reps. I mean, I think Lamar Jackson threw the ball like 15 times last week. So I think Mark Andrews is going to be heavily involved in the game plan. He's going over to 36 and a half yards this week.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity here for Mark Andrews to it's a really familiarity, right? He's been with the Baltimore Ravens, obviously with the entirety of his career, and just knowing this Browns team, and I think that him and Lamar Jackson throughout the years have just built that rapport and chemistry. I know they've added, obviously, we talked about Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers to the mix, but I feel like with a lot of these quarterbacks that you just kind of go back to your old reliable security blanket. And there's always a lot of times the tight end position. We talk about Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tom Brady, and Rob Gronkowski. I think Lamar and Mark Andrews are honestly in that category there as well. So I'd be with you on this one here, Sleepy. All right, Steve, fourth and final player prop for this week. What do you got?
This is the one I like the most, actually. It's Chase Brown. And just before we recorded, I wrote down 70 and a half. It's actually on the move right now. It's at 68 and a half at a couple different shops. But I'm not even sure if Chase Brown is going to play. He was injured last week. There's been some speculation on whether or not he is going to suit up. And if he does, to what extent can we expect him to play with that ankle injury? So right off the bat, it's not something that I would be looking to fade normally just because the injury factor. But Pitt's above average against the run. And last week versus Denver, his number closed at 71. So I'm not really sure why Chase Brown would open as high as it has under the circumstances. So this is really just a play on the fact that I don't think he's 100% if he's going to play at all. And if he does play, how effective is he going to be? I know they obviously have to win this game to have any shot at the playoffs, but that doesn't mean that he's going to suit up and be effective. So for me, I think it's going to be a lot on Joe Burrow's arm to kind of move the ball and secure that win, which is not surprising considering that's what he's done all year. And Chase Brown is elusive out of the backfield as far as a pass catcher. Maybe they save him for those kind of opportunities rather than between the tackles. So for me, Chase Brown under, we're going to have to change it now to 68.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I love this one as well. This was something that I was eyeing when he did suffer the injury last week. And it's talking about an ankle sprain. I mean, those are typically anywhere from 2 to 6 week recoveries, depending on how bad the ankle injury is. And look, I understand that you do need to win this game to have any type of chances of making the playoffs for the Cincinnati Bengals. But it's what you also mentioned, Steve, in your handicap. That has been Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and those guys have been really getting it done on the offensive side. Not saying that Chase Brown hasn't contributed, but even if he's out there, I mean, how effective he's going to be, especially at that running back position where you need to, make the cuts and make, defensive players miss tackling you. So I think that, again, if he does suit up, I'm with you. It was interesting. This number opened up at around 68.5, got up to 70.5. But it seems like he's going to be the last note, like you mentioned, was that he's going to be a true game time decision for the Cincinnati Bengals here. So it almost seems like a little bit of a free roll here for Chase Brown for this matchup. All right, for my final prop here, I'm also going to go with the running back. Give me Bijan Robinson over 91.5 rushing yards in this game against the Carolina Panthers. And a lot of times we've talked about this season, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. And the one thing that hasn't been fixable has been the Carolina Panthers rush defense. And you take a look at the last 4 weeks in particular, they've allowed one opposing running back to at least have 100 rushing yards on the ground. Last week we talked about Bucky Irving. He finished the game with 113 yards on the ground. James Conner the week prior, 15 for 117. Rico Dowdle, 25 for 149. Saquon Barkley, 20 for 124. The list goes on and on about the number of guys that have had 100 plus rushing yards against the Carolina Panthers. And earlier this season, the running backs there for the Atlanta Falcons between Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson combined for 200 rushing yards in those games. Bijan in that game, 15 for 95, 6.3 yards per carry. Tyler Algier, 18 for 105, 5.83 yards per carry. And I know you gave out the Michael Penix prop there as well, Steve. But again, I talked about it last week. We had Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Bucky Irving all have big games here. So I think you're going to have to rely on Bijan Robinson in this game. I think there's going to be opportunities for Michael Penix to have big explosive plays down the field and rack up the yardage there as well. But this is one of my favorite props this week. Bijan Robinson over 91.5 is the number. It's getting up to 93.5, but I still love it. And last note I'll add here, guys, for Bijan Robinson, the number of attempts have been there for him as well. The last 5 games, as far as rush attempts goes, he's had 22 or more. And for the last 5 games, last week, 17 attempts. He had 90 yards against the Washington Commanders there. So if he has another game where he gets 17, 18 carries, I think he can get another 100 yards against his Carolina Panthers rush defense. So give me Bijan Robinson over 91.5 rushing yards here. Sleepy, any thoughts on Bijan?
Carolina's rush defense is absolute Swiss cheese. It's terrible. I think one of the things here with Bijan that's a good thing for you is, at least when it comes to the attempts that he's been getting, is that Kirk Cousins was bad. Yep. Michael Penix is a rookie. So when you're in this particular situation where a win could get you in, it's not like we haven't seen upsets before. Tampa Bay, they can't get beat. If that's the case, well, then let's just go out there. Let's get a win. Let's rely on our best player. That's Bijan Robinson. Let him go out there and eat. There's a chance that he breaks this one off before halftime. He could break this off in a couple runs just because the Carolina defense, is that bad. So I'd be with you before I would be against you on this prop. I like this one too a little bit.
Yeah, the Falcons need obviously the Bucks to lose in their Week 18 matchup for them to get into playoffs, because the only way for them to get into the playoffs is winning winning the division in the NFC South. All right. So that is going to be our 4-player props each for NFL Week 18. Before we do get into the Sunday night football game betting preview here, again, it's a new year, 2025, but we still have a lot of sports going on, of course, and a lot of handicappers looking to get the year off on the right foot, putting money into your pockets right now. But Sleepy, let our listeners know, what can you take advantage of right now on pregame.com?
All right, so this is the big time of year where a lot of the pros feel extremely comfortable dropping games of the year. And reason for that is that they just have a lot of information. Steve knows when you get into the NFL playoffs, all your data is there, it's in front of you, you feel comfortable. Yeah, the books are sharp, but if the lines are off a little bit, you're going to see guys making big plays in those particular games. Same thing when it comes to the bowl games as well. These guys are dropping big games of the year. And if you go to pregame right now and you guys are looking to save $30 off any best bet package, which would include a game of the year, all you have to do is enter code PARTY30. That's PARTY30. That'll save you $30 off any best bet package there at pregame.com. I recommend you do that now because some of the strongest selections from the pregame pros are going to be coming down the stretch here with college football and the NFL playoffs.
All right, there we go. Get over there, pregame.com. Take advantage of it. Get the year started off on a winning note. All right, gentlemen, the game of the year, Sunday night football for all the marbles, the NFC North division, but that also comes with the number 1 seed in the NFC that'll clinch a first round bye and home field home field advantage throughout the playoffs, of course, before the Super Bowl. But right now, as it stands, the Minnesota Vikings will be in Detroit for this matchup. Currently, the number is -2.5 in favor of the Lions. Total tick down just a half point here. I'm seeing 56.5 out there now, and 57s are out there as well. But this should be a fun one. Again, a big game for both teams. I think the winner gets obviously the number 1 seed. I think the loser will drop to the 5 seed and playing on wild card weekend. But Sleepy, let me start with you on this game here, side and total. Anything that you are looking at for this game?
I like Minnesota in this game. Steve and I had a discussion on this game yesterday, and I had told him that, like, look, hey, I'm going to hold out. I'm going to try to hold out for 3.5. And those threes are even starting to disappear now. So now this one's down to 2.5. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to steal Steve's play here from yesterday because it makes sense with the line being 2.5. The smart thing to do here is go ahead and tease up Minnesota. That's the smart thing to do here. The Lions defense hasn't been good over the last couple of games. They've allowed 31, 48, 17, and 34 points. Now, the Lions offense has been good. They've scored 34 or more points in 4 straight games. That's fine. But I think which side of the ball is going to probably decide this game. I think it's a Minnesota defense because Detroit's has been lacking. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Steve's play here before he can go ahead and give it out. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to tease up the Vikings here to plus 8.5.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off of that. I mean, obviously, a game we saw earlier this season where it was 31-29, came down to the wire. Books are expecting this one to be a tightly contested matchup here as well. You know, you could obviously tease this up to 8.5 with maybe the Seahawks down to a little about a pick 'em, or any other game that's on the board that's quote unquote, we talk about those long teasers there. So I do expect to see points being put up in the game, like you mentioned. Sleepy, that the Lions defense has been atrocious to say the least. I know they've been missing a lot of key guys, especially on the defensive side here. But my favorite play is still going to be the over in this game at 56.5. It's a lot of points, but I think it's high up there for a reason. And we know what both these offenses are capable of doing against the opposing defense here. Steve, anything else you want to add to the side? I know Sleepy kind of stole your thunder there, teasing it up, but anything for side and total?
Yeah, I mean, Sleepy did have the spoiler alert, so sort of my mindset with the game, it went immediately to that over, and with how many points are there, it was up to 58 earlier, and in the conversation Sleepy referenced, I was mentioning that you knew it was going to come down because, frankly, that's just too high of a number. There's guys that just look at these numbers and they bet the unders just because of what the total is and not factoring in a whole bunch of scenarios that we could see. And I guess to further illustrate why that's important, earlier in the season, these two teams played and they had a total of 50.5. And that was a 7.5 point correction coming into this game. Is it warranted? It's up for debate. I mean, collectively, they had over 700 yards of offense. Both teams had over 7 yards, or had at least 7 yards per play. In comparison's sake, the best team in the NFL right now, the Baltimore Ravens, offensively averages 6.9 yards per play, which is historic. I believe it's the best in the history of the NFL for season-long statistics. So we saw some incredible offenses that put up 60 points in the last contest. And I don't know if you're going to talk to anybody that thinks it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think there are going to be points here, and I think that the number that's coming down is starting to get into an area where maybe I'd be interested in taking a look at it. What Sleepy said with the Vikings side of things, even though I think it's going to be high scoring, those typically have some variance that is implied in there. But frankly, I think it's still going to be a close game, which is why I think teasing that 2.5 up to 8.5 or finding that expensive 3 could be worth it. I mean, right now, Minnesota has the revenge angle. Obviously, it's from earlier in the season, but they lost by 2 at home. Now going to Detroit, you have to think that they're going to be super focused with the division and the conference first round bye on the line right now. This is a big deal for both clubs. They know each other very well. I think you're going to see a ton of offense. I think it's going to be an exciting game. And Munaf, you mentioned previously that this is the game of the year. Couldn't agree more. I'm very excited to watch this game. And for some duds that we've had, especially on Christmas and stuff like that, this is going to be a game that I think everybody should buckle up for. Get your popcorn, have a nice little drink, enjoy the game. Even though it's the last game of the regular season, I think it's going to be the best one we're going to get.
And a bowl of raviolis.
That's true. Well, not for everybody. Not for Munaf.
Not for everybody. Yeah,
not for everybody. But if you were one of the lucky people that Sleepy sent these raviolis to, have it while you're watching the game.
Yeah, if you were on his Christmas list and his New Year's list, you definitely will be enjoying that for this Sunday night football game. Unfortunately, me and Steve did not make the cut there. Maybe next year that'll change for us, but we kind of stay on Sleepy's good side. But yeah, I agree with everything you guys said about this. A good teaser opportunity. I think we do see some fireworks and big plays and points being put up in this game. So definitely buckle up for this Sunday night football matchup between these NFC North teams. All right, gentlemen, one order of business left here. That is going to be our player prop best bet to wrap it up, at least for the regular season. 12-6 on the year, coming off a victory where we did give Brock Purdy over on his passing yards. He went out with a bang, unfortunately dealing with an elbow injury. But we are going to be looking at it's, we talk about square plays, but sometimes square plays do win. And we're going to look at the Minnesota Vikings side, Justin Jefferson to go over on his receiving yards in this game. And, in big moments, in big games, those star players show up. And I think that is going to be what Justin Jefferson does in this game. Consensus number right now is sitting at 91.5 receiving yards. And we're going to go with the over on that. So, number one, look, for the last 5 games in the season, Justin Jefferson has gone over this number. He had 99 against the Arizona Cardinals. He had 132 against the Falcons, 144 against the Seahawks, and then just last week had 92 against the Green Bay Packers. We know the targets are going to be there. The last 3 weeks in particular, gentlemen, he's had a total of 38 targets from Sam Darnold. He's had at least 7 receptions in 5 straight games for the Minnesota Vikings offense there. And another thing or another stat that jumped off the page for me for Justin Jefferson is how well he, in his career, in the 4 games that he's played against the Detroit Lions at Ford Field, the numbers just jump off the page. And I'll quickly read these numbers down. In the 4 games in Detroit, 9 receptions, 133 yards, 11 receptions, 182 yards, 11 receptions, 223 yards. And then the last game last season, 12 receptions, 192 yards in that game. He's averaging 182 receiving yards in Detroit. He's averaging 10.8 receptions per game in those 4 games. He's also averaging 14 targets in those games. So when it comes down to it, I think Sam Darnold is going to continue looking for Justin Jefferson. Don't be surprised if he has, at minimum, another 100-plus receiving yard in this game here. But again, those numbers are just jumping off of the page for Justin Jefferson. So in big moments, I expect Justin Jefferson to step up here, gentlemen. Over 91.5 receiving yards as our player prop best bet here, Steve. What are your thoughts on Jay Jetta this week in our player prop best bet?
I mean, it goes with everything we were saying previously about, the high scoring total. I think obviously, if anybody's going to bring anything to this game, it's going to be that Detroit coach, man. Campbell is somebody that likes to roll the dice, take shots down the field, go for it on fourth down. So those are all aiding to the fact that they're going to have the ball and probably look to that over here. I'm sorry, with that's obviously Detroit side of things. Obviously, feel the same way about Minnesota. If Detroit is going to do that, Minnesota would obviously have to keep pace as well, which would be a boon to Justin Jefferson and my Amon-Ra St. Brown over that I mentioned previously as well.
Sleepy, any thoughts on Justin Jefferson this week?
Yeah, I think for everything that's at stake here with this game, you end up with what? The number one seed, a week off, home field advantage, and you fall all the way to fifth if he ends up losing this. And what are you on? You're on the road or whatever. I mean, the situation just goes from bad to terrible. Um, you have to go to your best player. And I don't think the head coaches or the coaches that are up in the box want to go ahead and have to answer for, why didn't we go ahead and throw Justin Jefferson the ball enough in this game? That's because you'll hear it in the broadcast, and we've seen it when these big games, it's like, well, where's he been? It's like you haven't heard from him, and it's like, why are they not going ahead and involving their best player? I don't think Minnesota's that dumb. Sam Darnold knows where his best target is. It's Jefferson. It's like we were talking about before with the Detroit defense. It's got some holes right now. It has some issues. It's leaking oil. You got to go to Jefferson. If Minnesota loses this game, it's going to be because Jefferson didn't have that big game like you're talking about there, Munaf. But if he goes off, and I think he actually likes that fast track there in Detroit, I think he's just hard to defend. This could set up for another monster game for him. That's what I think is going to happen here.
Yeah, 100% co-sign everything you guys mentioned here. So again, player prop best bet to wrap up the NFL regular season, at least looking to go to 13-6. Justin Jefferson over 91.5 receiving yards for Sunday Night Football against the Detroit Lions. And that, my friends, is going to do it here for this edition of the NFL Prop Show on RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Steve, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, obviously, I'd love to tell you how great Sleepy's cooking is. I can't do that. So we have to keep it focused on football. Last week of the regular season, it has been certainly a grind, but this is exciting times. I mean, I think the end capper with that Detroit, Minnesota game is going to be something that we remember for a long time. And I think it's going to be a great kind of transition into the playoffs where these games, I mean, essentially this is a playoff game, right? You're getting that first round bye out of it. So it should be fun. And, as a Giants fan, I'm glad it's over. So please just fast forward to Monday and we can move on with our lives.
Yeah, offseason officially kicks off for the New York Giants, if it hasn't already, but officially starting on Monday. Sleepy, anything else you want to mention before we go our separate ways?
Yeah, I actually want to ask Steve a serious question here when it comes to his Giants. How
Yeah.
do you feel, Steve, the fact that the Giants ended up winning the game last week and maybe potentially throwing away a future quarterback?
So two different perspectives, right? From the players' perspectives, they have to go out and play. They have to try their hardest. Obviously, their contracts are on the line. Same thing for Daboll. If Daboll was coming back next year, I think that he could call the game differently. I think because he's on the hot seat and he might not even have a seat, musical chairs here. I think he's going to be fired, that he still was now coaching for his career, not even for this specific job. So I think when you talk about the expectations and what I wanted from a Giants fandom perspective, I'm going to take that out of it, knowing that those two factors are full well what it should be. They should be trying their hardest, calling the right plays. But from a Giants fan perspective that cares about their future, this is horrible. And I don't even like the quarterbacks. And I don't like Shedeur Sanders. I don't like the Cam. Not that I've watched a ton of these guys, but this is not the quarterback class from last season. And frankly, Joe Schoen needs to find a quarterback. And I'm not sure you're going to be able to price yourself high enough to get Sam Darnold, even if the Vikings look to get rid of him. And then from the free agency market, what are you going to go? The Kirk Cousins, who's been injured and looked terrible. So this really hurt. And the reason why it hurt is not because I wanted Shedeur Sanders or any of the quarterbacks, frankly. It was because the fact that I'm still afraid they're now going to trade up for it. So we won a meaningless game that meant literally nothing to our team. And we might be trading assets to trade up for a quarterback that is not worth the number one pick to begin with, let alone mortgaging your future to get that person. I think Joe Schoen is on the hot seat as a GM. I think he will be retained. But all of these things led up to the moment where the Giants win a game and the players are excited, but it's going to set them back. I've seen it time and time again from the Giants and the Knicks perspective, where they're screwing themselves, winning meaningless games. And when games mean something, they don't show up. And that's what frustrates me most as a Giants fan, is that now the players are saying, oh, we're going to win, screw the fans, screw the draft picks. It's like, if you felt that way, then why not win early in the year? And then we could be excited about maybe making a playoff push. Getting your third win is irrelevant to me. It is what bad franchises do. And I not necessarily think it's going to set us back, but was not excited about the win.
I'm not surprised that that's your answer there. I felt like you were going to be a little bit frustrated with the effort that the Giants have been giving, and now all of a sudden they want to go and blow the doors off of teams. That was the best that they looked all year long.
Yep.
Without a doubt, they looked that good. But the only thing else I got to say here is that, it's been 18 weeks of this podcast, and I do all the editing for all the podcasts, and I post all the podcasts. This has been one of the best podcasts that we've ever done here at Pregame. I could tell you that right now. We have a very good mix of minds here with this particular podcast, and I think the idea of getting into these player props for Week 18 was a little bit of a struggle because there just wasn't a whole lot out there, and I didn't like a whole lot until I sat down with you guys today, and now I feel comfortable about a lot of the things that we talked about, because that's the beauty of this podcast, is that we can fill in the blanks. Munaf has a particular things that he likes and looks at. Same thing with Steve. Same thing with me. And I think that we offer a really good product. So I just want to say thanks to you guys, for going through 18 weeks of this. We made it through 2024, and hopefully we'll be back with the same podcast in 2025. Next year when the regular season rolls around. But be sure we'll be back here for the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It's just been a lot of fun just talking about player props here specifically on this episode and podcast. And we've had a lot of success, case in point to our year-to-date record with our player prop best bets for Monday Night Football. And it just kind of shows you the talent that we have here on this podcast. So it's just been a lot of fun with you gentlemen, but not done quite yet. We still have the postseason, which will be starting next week. All right, that is going to do it for this edition for the prop show on RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Enjoy the final week of the regular season. Hopefully we did find some winners for you guys, and we'll be back next week talking about the NFL postseason. Till then, good luck with your bets, and we'll talk to you guys down the road.